alte sesiuni sunt grupate pe playlist-uri, sunt grupate pe zone pe canalul nostru de YouTube, le puteți urmări și acolo. Intrați, urmăriți-l, aveți adresa de YouTube, puteți multe lucruri să le vedeți acolo, sunt sute și sute de înregistrări de emisiuni mai vechi, mai noi, puteți să le revedeți cu mare bucurie. Și vreau să facem în această emisiune să fie mai scurtă ca de obicei, pentru că vrem să înserăm un modul video mai lung de un sfert de oră al lui David Herzog. David Herzog este un scriitor și un slujitor al Domnului mai deosebit, implicată mult în vremurile de pe urmă. Noi am publicat 2 cărți cu David Herzog, vi le prezint și acum și o să le prezint și ulterior. Una este Curtea de Justiție a Cerului și a doua este Invazia Gloriei, umblarea sub un cer deschis, cartea lui, deci, cum chiar el mărturisește, cea mai larg distribuită. Acesta este David Herzog, un cercetător, un creștin preocupat de vremurile de pe urmă, de modul în care Dumnezeu își revarsă gloria sa în vremurile de pe urmă. De curând, el a primit așa un vis pe care l-a mărturisit pe social media și pe care noi l-am preluat și l-am tradus. Vrem să-l înserăm în această emisiune.
Third day into the fast, I have this very clear prophetic dream. In the dream, I'm talking to Donald Trump as the president, and this is, of course, before he was made president, before the inauguration. And I said to him, Mr. President, what are you doing about the third temple in Jerusalem? He looked at me very shocked, like surprised that I would even know anything about this. And he said, yes, we're working on something for the third temple to get it going. And then I woke up and I felt the Holy Spirit all over me, all over my body. I was like, what is happening? Is this really happening? And so I started to ask around. I have a friend who's very, very high level. I can't tell you who he is. He's not known, but he's in high level. I mean, he knows a lot of governments. He knows all the ones in Davos, even the ones at the World Economic Forum. But he's born again, spirit-filled, holy, tongue-talking. But he knows a lot of these people, and he works behind the scenes. And so I told him about my dream right after, and I said, do you know anything about any plans for the third temple and concerning Donald Trump? And he wrote me back immediately and said, yes, I already have confirmation that this will start happening by the end of this year, 2025. There are plans to start the building of the third temple. And I was like, wow. I said, how are you getting this information? And he told me his contacts, he triangulated in 3 places. Well, number 1, his friends in the Knesset in Israel, in the government. Number 2, people he knows that are with the Temple Institute, which is the priests and the ones that are actually getting all the articles for the third temple. They confirmed this timeline and what was happening. And number 3, he talked to a U.S. ambassador just like last week or 2 weeks ago. He was having a going away party. He was leaving a certain country, ambassadorship, and he confirmed it to him, all 3. So I get this dream, and then it was so clear. So I started researching and praying about this, and I really feel the urgency in the Spirit to get this out, to show us where we are on the end time timeline. Things, guys, are going faster than most of us realize. So then I asked him, when would the temple be finished? It wouldn't be completely finished and inaugurated until after Trump's term, around 2030, between 2030 and 2032. By the time they start building it, and by the time they finish and start using it. So interesting, because 2030 is a key year. Everyone talks about 2030, both the globalists and God, it seems like. So we have basically a few short years to win the lost, to take the gospel to the ends of the earth while we still have a window of time. But I want to get into this a little bit more. So it's been prophesied that Donald Trump is like a Cyrus. What did Cyrus do? King Cyrus, number 1, he helped Israel, or the Jewish people, go back to Israel and gave them cover, gave them soldiers and protection to go back to Jerusalem and make Jerusalem their capital. And Trump declared that Jerusalem is the capital of the Jewish state, and he's the first president to move the embassy. We moved our U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. In fact, I prophesied that at the first inauguration, 2016. I was literally at Trump Hotel, asked to come up on the stage in front of all the people, Knesset members of Israel and senators from the U.S. and pastors, and that's what came out of my mouth. The Lord said, He will declare Jerusalem the capital and move the embassy. And that's what he did. But the second thing Cyrus did was helped pave the way for the building of their temple. Their temple was destroyed, obviously, and they were exiles. And now Cyrus is helping them come back. And again, giving cover and even some financial help and peace and prosperity so they could build the temple. What is Trump doing? Peace and prosperity. The Abraham Accords looks like are going to increase now. I mean, it's funny because yesterday he said the U.S. would take over Gaza. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but that's very interesting. It looks like a short time of peace and prosperity, a couple years, under the Trump administration for Israel to fulfill end-time prophecy. That's what it looks like is happening. And it's really, really exciting. So a time of peace, of course, we know it's a false peace. It's not going to last forever. But there's a couple years of a somewhat peace, somewhat of a prosperity for Israel. And they could build. Now, let me tell you nothing about the temple. People say, for years I didn't really understand the third temple because I thought, well, why do we need a third temple? Jesus is our sacrifice. He paid the price. We don't need a third temple. But a third temple has to be in place for end-time prophecy to happen. It's part of it. That has to happen. And people ask me, does the Dome of the Rock, the mosque in the old city, in the place where the temple is, or near it, does it have to be destroyed or earthquake? No, it doesn't. In fact, I'm going to read to you a scripture in Ezekiel that talks about both the Dome of the Rock and the Temple Mount being together on that temple, which would make sense if there was an Abraham Accord of Saudi Arabia, and maybe the Saudis say, well, let the temple be there, but the mosque has to be there too. Ezekiel 42:20 said he measured the four sides. It had a wall round about 500 reeds long and 500 broad to make a separation between the sanctuary and the profane place. Now, in the first and second temple, there was no pagan temple next to the temple of God where they had to put a separation. So the profane place would be the Temple Mount, the Dome of the Rock, which the Antichrist profanes. It's also called the Court of the Gentiles. Where that Dome of the Rock is and where the temple is going to be are two different spots. When you're on the Mount of Olives looking at the Temple Mount, which is most pictures that you see, the actual temple, the third temple, would be to the right of it, not right where it's at. That's actually where it would be. Where the Dome of the Rock is now is the Court of the Gentiles. Revelation 11:12. But the court which is without the temple, leave out. Let me read that again. The court which is without the temple, leave out, measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles. And the holy city shall be tread underfoot for 42 months. So, why do we need a temple? Let me explain to you the importance of the third temple. It's not for our salvation, because Jesus is our salvation. His blood is the only blood that can forgive anyone of sin. But the temple has to be there for the Lord's second coming. Without a third temple, there's no second coming of the Lord. It's really, really clear in the Bible. And so I'm going to read you some more scriptures that prove that here. So it does not say, by the way, that the Antichrist will defile the Dome of the Rock. It says they refer to this temple as the temple of God, and that the Antichrist defiles it. So God allows this building of this third temple for his end time purposes. And 2 Thessalonians 2:4, he who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God and worship, so that he sits as God in now watch this, in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So it's listed in the Bible as the temple of God, or it's a temple built for the God of Israel. So what defiles the temple isn't the fact that they have a third temple, but that the Antichrist sits there and says he's God. So obviously we can understand what that is. So basically, in the end times, the disciples asked Jesus, okay, when are you, you're going to leave. All they know is Jesus is going to leave. Jesus says, I'm leaving, but I'll come back. So they ask him, when are you going to come back? What will be the signpost of your coming back? And so this would be, where we are now is the beginning of sorrows. So as well, there'll be wars, rumors of wars, which you've always had, but they're increasing, right? Earthquakes in various places, which we're seeing as well, which we've always seen, but they're increasing. Persecution, false prophets, that's starting to really increase. All this culminates, and then there's two big events at the end of the beginning of sorrows. But Mark 13:14, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet, standing where it should not be in that temple, let them that are in Judea flee to the mountains. So it's talking about believers, things to look for. So when they asked Jesus, when are you coming back? He mentions the wars, rumors of wars, persecution, all that stuff. And he goes, and this gospel shall be preached in all the earth. But then he mentions two big ones. He says, not to be deceived. Let me just get this here real quick here. Not to be deceived, that the great falling away comes first, and the man of sin or perdition is revealed. So those two things have to happen before his second coming. So, and it's telling you what to watch out for. Watch out for earthquakes, watch out for persecution, false prophets, a great falling away. Watch out for a man of sin being revealed. So, where are we right now in the end time timeline? We're at the beginning of, towards the end of the beginning of sorrows, which is like we're seeing wars, rumors of wars, pestilence, persecution. And then if you keep reading Matthew 24, it goes into, and the gospel of being preached in all the world, and this gospel is preached in all the world. Okay, but the last two verses of beginning of sorrows in Matthew 24 would be the great falling away and the man of sin revealed. So my point in sharing all this is to show you how close we are to the end times. Whatever you believe about when he's coming, things are happening fast. The temple, possibly this year, I don't doubt anything right now, especially with this administration. By the end of this year, it could be announced that they're going to start the building of a third temple. Now, will we still be here? Most likely, yeah, because Jesus said to watch for these things. Will we be here to see the beginning of the building? Most likely, yes, of a third temple. How long that could take, we don't know. It could take 5 years, 4 years, 10 years. My contacts are saying they believe it'll be ready by 2030, which is a really interesting number, between 30 and 32, when that would be ready. So, and then, of course, we know from the Bible that they'll have animal sacrifices up there. Halfway through that, the Antichrist will stop the sacrifices, say that he's God, and then you know, okay, and it says to watch out for these things. It's clearly what it says. So will we be here during that time? I mean, some people will probably pass away before that, but it gives the list of things as signs to watch out for. So I'm just saying, if we're not going to be here, why would Jesus say to watch out for it? So we possibly, it looks like we could be here to see the building of it, which I don't doubt. And even someone who says, I'm God, and sits in that temple, we don't know who that is. No one knows right now who that is. Even the person who that is doesn't know it's him, probably, because this person, who this Antichrist figure, is a normal guy that people would know, gets killed, and resurrects. And I believe that's when the spirit of the Antichrist comes into him and takes his body, and then he becomes the Antichrist. So no one knows. Probably not even the person that's going to be the Antichrist knows it's going to be him. So my bottom line is this: souls, souls, souls. That's the main thing Jesus is mentioning in these things. Look at these signs, but this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world. The end is not yet. It's closer. It's not yet. We don't have a temple yet. We don't have a guy saying he's God on the temple, but we're getting closer. So what is our job right now? Is it to argue about pre-trib, post-trib, pan-trib? No. It's to win the lost. It's to get people saved. We're doing about 14 international things this year. Most of them are crusades, large evangelistic events in the nations, like all South America. We're going to Asia, the Polynesian Islands. We're going to the Middle East. We're going to a lot of places this year. And so God is just in a hurry to win the lost. Nations are opening up. Muslim nations are opening up. Even the Abraham Accords, for that short time when they make peace with Israel, I believe there will be revival and souls being saved in those nations, like Saudi Arabia and other nations that decide to come into relationship with Israel, accepting Israel as a nation, letting them be who they're supposed to be, basically. So even though it's a false peace, it doesn't last forever, during that short time, I believe God's going to use that to expand the gospel like never before. So we don't have a lot of time. We really don't have a lot of time. But it's super, super exciting. And then let me read this again. 2 Thessalonians 2, 3, and 4. Let no man deceive you by any means. Deceive you about what? About when the Lord comes back. For that day shall not come, except There coming, number one, a falling away first, and number two, the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition. So falling away and man of sin. And to have a man of sin revealed, you have to have a third temple. So that's the whole purpose of a third temple. And so that Israel realizes, after they do their sacrifices, and it doesn't cover their sins, and the Antichrist gets revealed, and many of them realize, oh my gosh, we missed it. This is not the guy. This is not the Messiah. And then those who don't, of course, bow down to this false Christ, they're persecuted, and they got to run away. We're not there yet at all, right? But things are moving fast.